Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil Parrish.
Phil Parrish. Great to have you here, Phil.
Great to be here.
The skipper to my Gilligan, as it were.
You're going to get into that conversation they had on Enough Said.
Well, yeah, it's...
I told them, I said, you're the professor. It's already your name.
Yes. We'll just always be and the rest. That's... Yes. Anyway. So let's see here. So right now, the biggest news in Marvel we can't really talk about because that is something that's not... We haven't seen it yet, but... have you been dutifully avoiding spoilers, Phil? Because I have been trying like a bear to avoid them.
Yeah, I've been trying.
Yeah, I haven't really gotten any yet. I mean, the closest I saw was something that might have... honestly, I'm not even sure if I even remember. It was a headline that kind of said, what does the ending credits scene mean for this? And I was like, wait, what? And, it was like, I think some of my theories might be borne out in this. We're going to have to know tomorrow. But moving right along from there, biggest news that just dropped today. Did you see this, Phil? What? And I do feel, well, I know you saw this because you posted it. But, and I believe I actually said this I think, at least I've been saying it. I don't know if I said it on air, but I've been saying this a lot lately, that after Civil War premieres, Marvel would announce that they are going to be doing a Black Widow film. And sure enough, today, after Civil War has opened, we are getting, we got a statement from Paul Feige saying, was it Paul Feige or something else Feige? Because there's two Feiges in Hollywood. I'm sorry, what?
Is it Kevin Feige?
Kevin Feige, yeah. Paul Feige's the guy doing the Ghostbusters. And then there's Kevin Feige doing Marvel. So I don't know if they're related anywhere or if they're just, a name like Feige. There's hundreds of them. But anyway, but he made the statement that the one thing that they are most committed to for the next phase is a solo Black Widow film. Mm-hmm. And, and this has been a no-brainer for a long time. Black Widow has been, the heart of the Avengers, really. She is kind of the balance between everyone, between the Tony Starks, between the Captain Americas. I do wonder what a Black Widow film is going to look like. Is it going to be a standard spy thing? Is she going to be teaming up with someone? Is she going to be chasing a MacGuffin? As I've often said, your best plot for a Black Widow film is to have her chasing a MacGuffin along with Carol Danvers in a spy versus spy, SHIELD versus the, Air Force intelligence, situation that could eventually lead with Carol Danvers getting the superpowers,
Yeah, but was it confirmed? Yes. I don't know, because you said Black Widow is coming in the next phase, but did you see, I don't know if it was confirmed or not, but supposedly, I guess Captain Marvel's going to be in part one of, Infinity War, because we don't have the name for it yet, but...
Well, no, they did correct it. It's actually Captain Marvel who's going to be in Infinity War, not Captain Marvel. So, well, it was interesting that they said that. I do wonder if maybe it is going to be Captain Marvel, and maybe that we'll get Carol Danvers and we'll get Captain Marvel, and that's going to lead into the origin of Captain Marvel. Because, of course, that's always a thing in this, is how do you get to Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
Especially if you're jumping into Captain Marvel at Carol Danvers, rather than having her go through the Ms. Marvel phase, which is difficult, to be honest with you. It's something we can do because we have the history, but when you're just jumping into it at this phase, how do you get there? And so I would not be surprised if we see Marvel and Carol Danvers, and then we see her taking the name Marvel after he dies. Mm-hmm. Probably not of cancer.
Or what if he dies in battle and somehow his whatever kills him kind of transfers his powers to her?
Well, yeah. Well, I've always thought it would be cool if she got the nega bands, or the quantum bands. Although we do know that Professor Vaughn was at Shield Academy, so we may see him yet too. So we have this promise now of a Black Widow film, and now it's just waiting for the time. And we do know there are open slots because they have been moving around the Inhumans, and they're not quite sure what to do with them. Mm-hmm. Although, as has been said, they might be taking Inhumans not per se off the calendar, but prepping for a Fantastic Four film in which the Inhumans will be revealed, yes. Which is a real possibility too, because everything's always in negotiation. Because let's face it, one thing Batman v Superman taught us is comic book movies are hard. And, that film is, as I've always said, it's not even just about the film. It's also about all the ancillaries. And if you don't have a good film that people want to go see, not only are you losing at the box office, you're losing on the ancillaries. Yeah. Because, kids will always buy a Superman toy, but I don't know if they're going to buy a Batman v Superman toy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a Batman toy, a Superman toy, those will always sell, but you put Batman v Superman together, and suddenly it's like the two together are less profitable than the two apart, which is kind of rough going there.
Do you think could that work the same way with the Inhumans? I guess they could sell Inhumans if they were on their own, but the way I'm thinking is they're not going to do a solo Inhumans movie now. They're going to roll them into somebody else's movie, at least to start with, whether it's Fantastic Four back or if they put them in a Guardians of the Galaxy sequel or...
Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is that they've kind of danced themselves into a weird place with the Inhumans. Because basically, because they don't have mutants, they're putting the Inhumans into the mutant line. Where we've got people randomly displaying powers now, which is cool in the MCU. So they've got this way to have a mutant issue. And so then the question is, so are we going to make the Inhumans the X-Men? What are we going to do with the Inhumans? And at their core, they do have the lost royal family of the Inhumans. That there is this Inhuman royal family out there, and they don't know quite what to do with them, as it were. They don't know quite where to go and how to present it. But they're, I think basically what it is with the Inhumans is that they're not quite sure how to deal with them. And if they can roll it into something bigger, that it might be better for all concerned if they do that rolling. And, and this goes into the basic idea of why we've had to wait this long for a Black Widow film. Mm-hmm. And what I essentially see is that, Black Widow was a character that was too good to waste on her own film, as it were. That, once you introduced her in Iron Man, and she just stole the show in Iron Man, and then you put her into the Avengers, and then you go to Winter Soldier, and it's just too great of a character not to sprinkle her around. And when you're building, and also not for nothing, they all had all these other stories they had to tell, and having to tell those stories to build out your universe, because that's the thing. I make the point about Marvel going slower than DC at least, and that's fine. But at the same time, they're still trying to get to a point. They're trying to get to this point where they have this gigantic self-replicating superhero machine, where in the same way that you can make Marvel Comics forever, you can make Marvel Comics movies forever. And that, that makes perfect sense. Everyone, one of the things that, they recently said was, that, we plan on making these for decades to come, The MCU is not going anywhere. And and that's fair. Well, first off, because from Marvel Studios' perspective, the MCU can't go anywhere. It's like they exist to make Marvel movies. That's their whole raison d'etre. They're going to keep on making Marvel movies. It's like it's not like they're going to do new from Marvel, a romantic comedy about two guys who are not superpowered heroes. You're not going to get the Sleepless in Mole Town. I don't know. He was a mole man. She was a blind sculptress. No. It's not something we're going to get anytime soon. No, they have to make superhero films, so they're going to keep on making superhero films. And for right now, why not? Because they're making their money back. Even a poorly performing superhero film is still making them money if it's popular enough to sell the ancillaries. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to keep on making these films. They're going to keep on expanding the universe. They're going to be going on to other platforms. And it's an interesting thing I'm kind of seeing. One of the things that the Russo brothers have said was that if you go to see Civil War, and that is their first Marvel movie, you might find it a little confusing, which is fine. And they are embracing that idea. And I think that's a good thing for the movies to embrace, because that's going to allow them to bring in the TV things. One thing I've kind of noticed is that it seems like the TV shows, the Netflix and the television ones, all expect you to have seen the movies, or at least to have a passing familiarity. The movies are trying to operate in a blank slate. And I think that the movies are understanding that they have to move beyond that. They have to say, we're just going to trust that you're going to know who this guy is when he shows up, Well, yeah. You're going to know why this character is important. We're going to have to start using the shorthand, because it's getting big enough where every time they do something like this, they have to be able to use. They can't just retell the whole story every time.
I think they're saying that about Civil War.
Feige has said is that Homecoming is not really I'm sorry, what?
I was gonna say. I think they're saying that about Civil War. Is they're saying if Civil War is your first Marvel movie, you're gonna be lost.
Yeah. Well, see. Here's what I'll say: is I doubt you will be. I doubt you really will be, because there is a certain level that I think the MCU has penetrated, where it is just in the collective unconscious. Where even if you haven't seen these films, you know the stories. The stories have been told and retold in enough other side projects, enough other things, whether it was sketches you've seen on Saturday Night Live, or an article you read on Cracked.com, or just, the reviews that are just out there in the zeitgeist. You know enough about who these characters are and what the source material is that you're not overwhelmed by it. You're not going to be, well, what's going on here? You're going to go, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. I know what's going on here. That's Iron Man, that's Captain America, and they're fighting. And I think that's going to be a lot what we're going to see in Homecoming, is that they're not going to spoon feed us the origin of Spider-Man. Even though it's not, a retelling of the Spider-Man story, it's coming into existence in the Spider-Man universe, where there is a Spider-Man, and you're not going to be spoon-fed what all the backstory is, because, quite frankly, by this point, you should know it. We don't need to show you Martha Kent's grave. Essentially, is what we're going to be at here. We don't. We're just going to assume you know what's going on. And I think that's a fair cop, because I do think that at a certain point, these things do become this collective unconscious. It's like, if you're not going to have, if I say, well, they're like Romeo and Juliet, you don't need me to explain to you who Romeo and Juliet are. And at this point, it's like, if I say, well, they're Captain America and Iron Man, you don't need me to explain who those guys are. You know who those guys are at this point. It's just part of our collective understanding of popular modern culture, that these are just, You know, you don't need me to tell you that Ross and Rachel were on Friends, because even if you don't watch Friends, even if you never saw Friends, you know that Ross and Rachel are on Friends and that they had a romantic entanglement. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we are with the MCU. I think that's where DC wishes it was, but they don't want to do the work. You know, that's DC's problem. They lazy. Although an interesting story that came out among all these many stories that are coming out right now. Did you see this about where Captain America almost wound up? No. That just before Marvel Studios got founded, they almost sold the rights to Captain America and Thor.
No.
Oh yeah. Thor was almost sold to Sony.
Huh.
So Thor would have been in a Spider universe, which would have been interesting. Mm-hmm. But do you know who almost bought Captain America?
Was it Fox?
No.
Who?
Warner Brothers.
What?
Yes, they were just about ready to. Well, they were desperate. They were looking for money, and they were about to sell the rights to Captain America. Warner Brothers wanted Captain America. I mean, you know, the downside of this is that means that we lost out on the Golden Age Captain America Batman universe build out, because that would have been awesome. Oh. You know, Batman and Robin in World War II fighting alongside Captain America and Bucky.
I thought you were going to say
with the Joker and the Red Skull people.
I thought you were going to say Batman Captain America fight. Batman v Captain America.
No, because hopefully someone would have told them that it's not cool when superheroes fight. They should actually try to work together, unless they have a real major disagreement. Or if they fight, it's just a small misunderstanding at the beginning of the film, not what you're building to at the end. You know, it's like, oh, we meet, let's fight because we don't know what to make of each other. Wait, we're actually both heroes. Let's unite to fight the bad guy. That's how you tell that story, Warners. You should know this. You do own DC, and I do think they actually do have writers who work at DC. But no. So we did miss that. So that is like the one regret about that, is that we didn't get a Superman Batman crossover universe, because that would have been a universe worth building. You set the whole thing as Golden Age universe, where everything's a period piece in the 1940s. Oh, that would have been so amazing, you know? And you just tell this story of Captain America and Batman as they're, you know, not quite sure how to judge each other, and they're fighting in this war, this great war against, you know, these things. And of course, Batman, he's this guy who's been fighting in the streets, and Cap, he's just this soldier, and, you know, and the difficulties that they face. And then all of a sudden some alien shows up and a woman show up, but, you know, they're going to keep on fighting. It could have been great. But honestly, Warner's probably would have screwed it up. So probably we are all very thankful that is not what we got. But that does lead to what I think is kind of where we're at right now, which is wild speculation. Because really right now, since you and I have not yet seen Civil War, but it is really the most pressing issue in Marvel, let's talk about what our wild speculations are. What do you think is the wildest thing that you think you might see tomorrow in Civil War, Phil?
Probably. I'm curious about how the first interaction we get with like Tony Stark and Peter Parker. You know, you're going to see some crazy stuff with the Black Panther. Mm-hmm. And one of the newer commercials, it looks like we get some interaction. I guess we get some kind of confrontation, but I don't know, maybe between Spider-Man and Bucky. That's gonna be.
Oh yeah, well we've seen. Yeah, well we basically see Spider-Man totally owning all of the human level heroes. Where it's like, you know, knocks Falcon out of the sky, and then, you know, Bucky hits him with the robotic arm, and he's just like, catch. Like, proportionate strength and speed of a spider, my friend.
But yesterday.
I also like it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to say yesterday I did put up a poll on our Marvel Roundup Twitter page at Marvel_Robo. And I said, who are you looking most forward to and to seeing in Civil War? Captain America and there's 4 choices because that's all it let me take. Captain America and Iron Man tied for last place with 10% apiece. Like the 2 major players in there, they got the lowest. Black Panther,
yeah, because we've seen them.
Yeah, I know.
There's nothing. Yeah.
I was going to say, Black Panther got second place with 29%, and of course, winning the whole thing at 51%, Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, Spider-Man is, we have been waiting so long for Spider-Man. Yeah, and, but I do like, when I did, the one commercial I did see, recently with Spider-Man is like, Cap, it's an honor to meet you, it's like, not what we're doing here, Spidey. No one told Spidey it was going to be war.
War, what is it good for?
Yeah, but I've talked a lot about what I think we might see. I do think we might see something about, a creation of a Dark Avengers or Secret Avengers or Thunderbolts kind of concept under General Ross. I could see definitely I would love to see Jack Monroe. I think that's my most outlandish theory, that you might see or get some reference to the 50s Cap and Bucky. I think that might be really awesome if they do that. Mm-hmm. But we'll have to see what we can do. There's a lot of possibilities out there, and I'm excited about them. Also coming up is of course the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Finale, and we've got a lot of wild speculation about that. Although I did, kind of a joke here is that I posted this to my Facebook page, which is that I'm sure we've all seen the meme about Civil War spoilers. Lee is defeated and Lincoln dies. And, I made the comment. You're an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan as you see the meme that says Civil War spoiler, Lincoln dies, and you don't realize it's a joke. And who is going to die is like the big question. And who I'm most worried about is Agent May.
Yes.
And I hope to goodness they don't get rid of Agent May, because even though I know Jack doesn't like her, and I know Rob is not too fond of her either, but I know Jack just despises Agent May, but that's okay, Jack.
I think the big thing is I don't think they've done a lot with her character this season. So I don't know if that's fueling speculation, is what happened with her husband, and that they haven't given her a lot to do this season. So everyone's like, okay.
Well, but I guess, from my perspective, May is the stoic heart of the team. May is what makes it a team. That's the thing I'm going to say, is that without May, it's not a team. It's a bunch of people running around crazy. May is the one who says, no, we have a job to do. We have a thing we're doing. May is the mom of the team, if you want to put it in terms like that, even more so than Coulson is the dad of the team. May is the matriarch. She is the person who is making the team work.
Well,
she is the one.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, do you think they're going to cop out and it's like, yeah, someone dies, but their heart stopped for like 30 seconds, so clinically they're dead, but they'll be able to resuscitate them?
Well, no, because what we saw is they're on a spaceship and it blows up. So, like it's not like the death is like, it's not like, we got a vague sense someone died. It's like, no, we saw an image of someone on a spaceship and then the spaceship blows up. That was the image we got.
Yeah, but when it comes to visions and stuff like that, it's always like, okay, is everything happening in chronological order, and
Oh no, and I had made the comment. It's possible that the person we see is Yo-Yo, and we see her jumping in and jumping out. With her super speed. Although where she's jumping, I'm not sure. But this is why I'm really worried about May. Because during the whole, Marvel whitewashing the Ancient One controversy got up, May got really, really up in the business on it. Even more than Chloe Bennett made her statements, but she was like, I think we do a good job. May got, this is just kind of hogwash, and it's not May, it's Ming-Na Wen. She's a different person than her character. So the actress Ming-Na Wen, who I do love, she's a great actress, and she's. I want to go to a convention where she's there just to see her and say I really love your work, from Mulan on up. But she's a Disney princess. But what worries me is that she got really into it, and I'm thinking, wow, for a person whose bread is buttered by these people, you're talking a lot. And it could just be the righteous indignation as an actress of color seeing a role of color being whitewashed into a white actress. I can see that, but it was like, man, did you just lose your job today?
Maybe.
And that's what worries me is that she said, I know I'm dead in this season. I know how it played out, and I'm just going to say what I feel because, fridging May would really be an icing on the cake of just, but that's the thing. It's like, Marvel has all these great, the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has all these great characters and actors of color, and then they keep dying. And it's like, kill off a white person. Just show that we're not just killing the people of color. And, like sometimes it's like, oh, okay, when they killed off Trip, it was a real powerful, because that was really like the first death in it. Okay, technically, Patton Oswalt was the first death, but then they brought his identical twin in, and it wasn't quite as heavy of a death. Mm-hmm. So hey, they kill white people too. They killed Patton Oswalt. Although we haven't seen a lot of the Cunning brothers lately. Although hopefully we will. Hopefully in the season finale. Although I know that Patton is going through stuff right now, unfortunately, because sadly his wife passed away. Just 2016 stop. Too much dang tragedy this year. I'm getting sick of it, Yeah. So I know that probably, so Patton might not have, been up to shooting scenes this season, which, no one's going to blame the guy for that. But, part of me maybe, I guess on a lot of levels, maybe it'll even be good if he does come back just to show that, he's still around and he's still embracing life, but if he doesn't come back till next season, I'm not going to blame the poor guy. Yeah. But like I'm saying, so I do worry about it. But, I hope they're not going to be foolish enough to kill May, because I do think May is the heart of that team. I don't think it's a team Sorry?
No, I didn't say anything.
You're really breaking up, Phil.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So to sum up, I mean, so Phil, you were saying something about the possible death of either the character of May or possibly something related to Patton Oswalt.
Well, I know you were saying, with the continual whitewashing, and I was like, yeah, they might get rid of Agent May, but we can't get rid of Ward no matter what. He crushes his chest, he comes back. No matter what you do to this guy.
But on the subject of whitewash, that was an interesting aspect of that, because, onto that idea, the actual director of it basically made a very kind of a mea culpa tweet, basically saying, look, we make choices and sometimes we make the wrong choices about this thing. This is a real issue. We do recognize that Marvel tries to have a diversity of cast, and we made some choices here that we thought were right. Obviously, a lot of people don't agree. We understand and we recognize that. We're not going to sit here and say that, oh, you guys are wrong, even though we made this choice. And we thought it was the right choice at the time. We do understand your point as well. And it got me thinking, because, what really strikes me as funny about this is that I brought up the whitewashing issue months and months ago, when Tilda Swinton was first cast. And there was not this big angry pushback. You know, it's one of these things that where it's like nobody got really upset about Stick in Daredevil being played by a white guy. Now, granted, the exact racial history of Stick was not as straightforward, even though one could strongly argue he was sort of drawn as an Asian guy. You know, that wasn't really strongly put forward what his background was, and so having played by a white guy wasn't a thing. But I did raise that issue then. At about the same time that Stick was being played by a white guy, Tilda Swinton came out. And you can listen to the shows, because I raised it then, and I made the point that I'm also a little upset about the fact that suddenly, you know, Tilda Swinton, who's 52, is considered ancient. You know, but what I realized, and I mentioned this at the time, that what was interestingly brilliant about it was that they released this thing of Tilda Swinton, you know, turning a character white. And then a couple weeks after that, they released the Mordo, the news who was cast as Mordo. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be this African-American actor. And I made the point at the time, you know, it's funny, Tilda Swinton gets cast, nobody's making a big stink about it. And now, if you didn't make a stink about Tilda Swinton being white and how you're not honoring the history of the comic book, you can't really make a stink about the fact that Mordo is black now and saying, well, no, I'm not racist. I'm just honoring the history of the comic book, you know? And I really felt that was the three-dimensional chess that they were trying to play here. And I do get that. And I still think that was what their original purpose in this whole idea was that they were saying, you know, we need to have a more diverse cast. We need to have a black guy in this. And we don't want to deal with a lot of Asian stereotypes, because we're going to have, you know, we're trying to find a balance in this story that we can work with. And they decided to, telling the story, they already know that they're going to have Mordo be much more of an uneasy ally to Doctor Strange rather than be the villain of the piece. That they already know that you know, they're going to be doing Mads Mikkelsen as, you know, possibly. I kind of wonder if he's going to be like the Hood in this, that he's, you know, going to be like the human who is acting as the doorway for Dormammu, rather than, you know, sort of in the way Parker Robinson, although he may not be Parker Robinson. Although, who knows, maybe they'll make him Parker Robinson. We'll have to see what they decide to do with that. It would be a very interesting way to go with the character. And something I would really enjoy to see. But they already knew where they were going with that. And so they knew that, you know, he's a villain role, but they can cast him because he's actually going to have something of a redemptive arc as a hero, and more closer to kind of what Mordo was in the Doctor Strange cartoon, which was pretty cool. I think they're probably pulling a lot from the Doctor Strange cartoon movie they did, where, you know, Wong and Mordo, they're all part of the Ancient One's army of mystics fighting against Dormammu and all this kind of stuff. So I think that's sort of where they're going with that. That's what I anticipate with this. But I do think that their idea was that they were going to cast Tilda Swinton in this role because they knew that she was a nerd darling. It's Tilda Swinton, and they know that she's a good actress, and they know there's not going to be this pushback against a Tilda Swinton unless there's going to be this whitewashing pushback, which there wasn't at that time. It wasn't until the trailer came out that we got all this pushback, possibly just because, you know, there wasn't George Takei didn't know about it until after the trailer came out, you know, and I do get why George Takei is mad, because it's like, dang, old guy Asian role, come on. That's his bread and butter. Although that's another aspect of this, because, you know, I had long said that my dream cast for the Ancient One would have been George Takei, because he's got that powerful voice. He is just, you know, he is a good actor.
Oh my.
He has just, yeah, oh my. And, you know, you wouldn't have him say oh my, but you can have him do just this very weighty dialogue, you know, I am the Ancient One and I am the da, da, da. But the truth is, and this is the thing, the casting George Takei at the end of the day would have been just as controversial as casting Tilda Swinton. because you would have been casting a Japanese man as a Chinese man. And in our very white Hollywood sensibility, a lot of directors would not think that would be an issue. But of course, when they did Memoirs of a Geisha and they cast a Chinese actress as a Japanese actress, there was all sorts of people online where rage is born, that were throwing a fit about that. So in that sense, as much as I can feel George Takei's perspective, both in the fact that it kind of sucks to have another, Asian role taken away and given to a white person. If it had been given to George Takei, if they had cast an Asian actor, someone would have been offended as well. Either because it's an Asian, because it's like this. If they cast a Japanese person in this role, then it's, so there's no difference between Japanese and Asian and Chinese people. If they had cast a Chinese person in this role, it's like, it's an Asian stereotype, the ancient Chinese wise master. And if they cast a white person in this role, it's going to be problematic. And I think what they tried to do was cast a popular person in a race switched role, so that when they cast their other race switched role, people wouldn't be able to complain, because they didn't complain when they made the person white, because they knew the people that were going to complain the loudest were going to be white people at first, because that's what they had been used to. And then having her be white, they figured they were going to dodge some bullets and then give themselves cover from the people that were going to be making a fit over. I still can't pronounce the dang guy's name. It is, but the guy who's playing Mordo. And I think that worked until the trailer came out, and then people who were not active nerds in the nerding community said, hey, wait a minute, it's another white person playing an Asian role. And so I think that in the grander context, I think it has more weight, but from where it got left, I think that grander context got kind of lost there, unfortunately. At least that's my take on it. As I've always said, the only thing that can save the film is the film itself. And I'm still waiting to see what they do with Wong, because Wong is in the film, and how they deal with Wong is going to do a lot to say how this film gets accepted. And that's the truth of it. Is how they handle Wong is going to have a lot to do with what this film actually winds up being. So, okay. What else is in the news there, Phil?
I don't know if we have any more Marvel news. It's all
the big. Here is I think, and this is, I don't know if I marked my words on it, but I know I freaking said it last episode, which is Ben Affleck is now executive producer on Justice League, which is basically, on Justice League, which is basically DC saying, Zack, it's been real. Zack Snyder is not going to be the creative driving force of the DC universe. Now, there is an actual bad argument here, which is that, okay, now they're going to make Ben Affleck this guy, but Ben Affleck hasn't made his Batman film yet. So as much as I'm sure Ben Affleck's going to do a better job than Zack Snyder did on this previous project, I wonder if, again, Warner's is just jumping to, the Russos didn't get Infinity Wars until after Winter Soldier, and they were pretty much done with Civil War. They had to earn their spot to get Infinity Wars. They didn't just walk into it. And Affleck is now getting Justice League pretty much sight unseen. That he's writing a script for a film that's not even produced yet, and they're already moving him up the ladder onto Justice League. And I think that is, it might be fine. He might be a Whedon-esque talent. Although I think that actually after Infinity Wars, I think people are going to be like, looking at the Russo brothers and saying Whedon who, from the way that people are talking about how good Civil War is. But yeah, so I don't know. It's like casting, putting Affleck in charge. It's like, it's definitely not a step down from Snyder. It's definitely a step up from Snyder, but it could also be a step sideways. It could be the same problem, different outfit, and you do get into this problem that if the problem is at Warner's and the way that they're approaching their films, and not with the people making the films themselves, then that's your problem. One of the things that has been key about Spider-Man and the Sony deal is Marvel saying, we are in charge. This is, Sony's putting up the bill and Sony's going to get a lot of the money, but we're making the film because, quite frankly, that's what's going to make this a Marvel film. This is going to be a Marvel film produced over at Sony Studios. It's going to be in our universe with our approach to it, which is respecting to an extent within reinterpretation, but respecting the basic idea from which everything is derived, being true to the character. Because they do make changes and they do make alterations, but all with a reverence to what the core of the character is. And that I think is going to be good for the film, for Sony in that. And I think if Fox decides to, and like I said, I pretty much am certain that the Fox will probably float the balloon with Fantastic Four after Homecoming. After Homecoming makes $1.5 million. Fox will come and say, okay, what can we work out with Fantastic Four? And they're not going to give them the X-Men yet, because they're going to say, no, we're holding off on the X-Men because they're still our bread and butter. Because they can make X-Men films forever. The X-Men have a deep enough backbench that they can do X-Men films forever. But I think they'll tip the balloon with Fantastic Four, and the Fantastic Four works, and they'll move on from there. But that's my biggest wild-eyed speculation, is that after Homecoming, you're going to hear that Fox is going to make a deal on Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be part of the Phase 4 too, and that's probably going to be what holds on to the Inhumans. That's going to take the Inhumans slot, and the Inhumans are going to be part of the Fantastic Four verse. Yeah, because of course the original Inhuman plotline with the Fantastic Four was a great thing, and who knows, maybe they'll even open it up with the Wizard and his frightful four and Madame Medusa, and then you'll find out all that stuff there. That'll be great. Watch for it,
because every live action Fantastic Four movie we've had Doctor Doom. I mean, if you mix up the Inhumans and the Frightful Four, that would at least be original.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's there's a deep well for Fantastic Four villains that are actually complex and interesting beyond Doctor Doom. In fact, one could really argue Doctor Doom is the most comic booky of their characters, because he's his entire origin is kind of very basic. I mean, even the Mole Man is more interesting, I think, than Doctor Doom when you want him to. Kind of this twisted guy, and kind of obsessed about things, but yeah. So I think that's all the news at Marvel right now, and DC, and all the connections that we're going to get. I want to say there was one. Oh, wait, one other thing. I just want to do this real quick. There's been all the rumors out that Agent Carter's dead, and that Marvel's Most Wanted is sick. I don't know how much I trust this argument. Just a sec. For the very simple reason that I think, I don't think, first off, Agent Carter has always been a mid-season replacement. It has never gotten a full season order, I don't think it has ever been intended to have a full season order. And I think they would love it if it got the kind of interest that gives them the move to a full season. But I think that basically it's in a very good spot to still come back in some form. And as I've said, I would love to see it actually tied into the Marvel's Most Wanted. The idea that, we're going to have, because Dominic Fortune's in there, which means Dominic Fortune could have this ties back to Peggy Carter in the early days of S.H.I.E.L.D., And that would be a pretty awesome thing to do. Now they're also saying that Marvel's Most Wanted is on the bubble, but I can't buy that at all, because we're talking about a show that they've already written out like the 2 most popular characters to make this show. This show is going to get something, I don't believe that at all. I mean, I know they're moving it slow, but they always move it slow because Marvel has a lot of pieces on the board, and they're just sort of looking at everything. And, part of it could be that they're debating right now, is this an ABC show? Is this an ABC, I forget what the name of the other channel is, where they're going to be putting Cloak and Dagger? Is this a Netflix show? Should these be TV movies? Should these be mid-season replacements? And I would not be surprised if what we get for Marvel's Most Wanted is a mid-season setup that's going to tie into Agent Carter. That's going to have these Agent Carter ties. That's going to be part of what the Dominic Fortune Mockingbird adventure is, or Mockingbird and Hunter adventure is. And who knows, maybe we'll even get Jeremy Renner to do a guest shot. Because even though Hawkeye's a married in this, you still always want the Hawkeye Mockingbird dynamic to be in there somewhere, Maybe Hawkeye and Mockingbird date early on in the academy or something before he met Mrs. Hawkeye. But yeah, so that's that. I'm not too worried about it, because basically they've been saying Agent Carter isn't coming back since before Agent Carter got first made. So, this has been something that's been brewing for a long time, and I think Marvel both understands the value of Agent Carter. I think one of the biggest problems with Agent Carter has just been this inability to embrace. And I think it's partially this idea that they don't want to get too crazy in Agent Carter because they don't want to have to explain why there aren't superheroes running around all over the place. They can't get too deep into the Golden Age because they have to still have superheroes be new and strange when Tony Stark shows. And I think that's one of the places they find themselves. But of course, then S.H.I.E.L.D. gives them that perfect cover, But they haven't gotten to S.H.I.E.L.D. yet; they're still at the SSR. So, if they can just get Peggy Carter to the S.H.I.E.L.D. era, then you can have this whole thing about hiding everything away, which they've already touched on a bit when they did Agent Carter and the Kree Corps that they found at the end of the war. They'd always been hiding things. So. I do think there's still a lot of great potential there, and I do think they're going to get to it. But as with all things, there is a lot of complexity to it. But I would be really shocked if we don't see Agent Carter back, either in interstitial background stories in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in Marvel's Most Wanted, or in her own next series or TV movie or something. And along those lines, I would be shocked if we don't get Marvel's Most Wanted, just because they've already put so much into it. I think one of your biggest, maybe your biggest debate right now is whether or not they just want to go full Netflix on it. Or even maybe go to HBO, because I'm sure HBO would love a nice superhero drama. Lots of things you can do. Okay. I think that is enough connections for 1 week. Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we hit it all.
Yeah. Well, and we'll be back here tomorrow. I mean, a week later for you guys, but tomorrow for us to review Civil War, Captain America 3. Oh, that was one of the things I wanted to mention, which is the premise of Iron Man 4. But, we can talk about that tomorrow during Civil War 3. Or Captain America 3. Okay, so tune in for that. And Phil, if they would like to write to you, talk to you about all this nonsense, where can they write to you?
You can always get a hold of me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I'm at nightwingpdp. Basically, most social media, it's nightwingpdp.
Okay. And of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at CharlieEsser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. And of course, write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And don't let your autocorrect make it to superconductivity. That's a different thing altogether. So thank you for joining us, fair listeners, and please connect with us again next week. Good night.